What's up, guys? Welcome back. It's Maverick here today with another episode of Ya Boy Kongming. So, I presume in this episode we are going to be seeing the showdown between Kongming and this talented rapper, Kabetaijin, I believe was his name. The Kabe for the wall, or I guess cabbage if you want to go that route. I'll decide later what to call him, right? To be honest, I wasn't all that impressed by the rapping in the last episode. I think we can do much better here, so hopefully this episode is going to have some sick rhymes and some sick beats. Now, again, a lot of the intricacies of Japanese rapping is in the sort of wordplay that they do. Rhyming is not the biggest problem when it comes to Japanese rapping because it's fairly easy to rhyme and have that flow in Japanese. It's more so how you can control the rhythm of the words and the puns that are put into it. Now, honestly, my Japanese is not that good enough to instantly recognize all the puns and so on and so forth, so if I do miss anything, feel free to point them out. In any case, let's get into the episode. Alright, let's begin in 3, 2, 1, play. Yeah, he was honestly quite smart. To be honest, I honestly, out of the three, the three emperors, if you will, of the Three Kingdoms area, I respect Cao Cao the most. He just might be my favorite person from the entire Three Kingdoms period, closely tied with Kongming. It's such a trippy scene, this one. That's what they all say. Just a little bite, just a little taste. I wonder if this, I feel like this opening is like way too good to not be utilized within the anime, but unfortunately with a lot of these music shows, they don't actually end up using the opening. And by the way, the translation here is absolutely trash. They're not even bothering to translate it. uh, they're only like translating the actual like English words and whatnot. You would think after 6 episodes they would have done something about it. Uh. Oh yeah, and 6 episodes. This also marks probably the halfway point of this anime, right? Kongming's freestyle. Okay, so there's definitely a cover song, right? Essentially says it's an older song that everybody must know. It has a very 90s vibe to it. I actually Hmm. Oh. Damn, we're getting his backstory as well. Just say what exactly you're. That is such a like a Gaolu sort of accent. Well, why does Kongming know about this though? All right, so even though like his problem isn't exactly like uh, being afraid of crowds or antisocial or whatnot, but I guess he is still much more of an Inkya, if you will. Hmm. You know, I don't. Sorry, I'm actually more concentrating on the background music here. It has a very distinct 90s sound, but I can't quite. I don't. Like, it has a very nostalgic kind of sound. I don't quite know if it's actually really a cover of an old song, though. It sounds familiar, it sounds nostalgic, but that's just how a lot of songs sounded like. That's quintessential 90s J pop. Time transcending. So that includes Kongming? Aki. Oh, wait! They directly call him out? Dude, putting him on the spot, that is seriously not. Oh my god. Ooh, damn. That is some fire trash talk, actually. That's funny. And a lot of Free Kingdoms inspired inspired games. You know, if you're a warrior type, you can obviously battle on the battlefield, right? But for a lot of like the more intellectual types and whatnot, a lot of games end up having them battle each other through words and whatnot. Like writing poems or you know, insulting people based on their words instead. So that's why to me this is super funny. It's not necessarily used in the Dynasty Warrior series of games, but for a lot of other Free Kingdoms inspired games, they had this kind of stuff. That's nice. That's not bad. Hmm. That was a good play on his name as well. His wordplay is nice, but his flow is honestly lacking. Like Kabetaijin's flow is much better. I know. I think what they're implying here is that Kongming has a larger repertoire of words. That wasn't bad. Honestly, though, this back and forth is way too long. You don't typically go back and forth for this long. And if they do want to do this, then they gotta like sort of switch up the beat as well. So another round? Yep. Come on, switch up the beat, man. Switch up the beat. No. Yeah, the flow of Kongming is honestly just terrible. But I believe he's using like a much larger repertoire of words than Kabe is using. Zhang no. Awesome. Dang, this guy actually knows some Three Kingdoms references as well. And this goes back to the Masu one reference that we made back in the first episode. Hmm. Oh. Serious. I'm not entirely sure like what reference that one was. I'll have to look it up a little bit later. Talk about an educated man, this dude. Yeah, see, you gotta like switch up the beat and allow them to adapt. Honestly, there was a lot of interesting choice of words around here. So what was the point of the previous rounds? And then here we get like the wholesome part. I'm more curious like how Kongming knew about that part of his history. Of his background. But don't question it. Just don't question it. Oh, you were the one? So were you the one that told him about the song? Oh no, no, Kongming was the one who actually got it. Oh. Okay, I love this. I love this one. Okay. See, this is what I want to see more, actually. Like, this kind of intelligence and thinking ahead and planning ahead. Hey DJ, someone say yeah, yeah, yeah. I want to take a look at what song it was. I'm not sure if I want to sit through this with all you guys though. Like, I'm sure you guys have something better to do. Oh, what the heck! If you guys want to skip ahead to the analysis part, you know, just click the timestamp down below. I mean, Keepin' JoJo is such a great song, so I have no problem sitting through this. Yeah, I just want to quickly look at like what that insert song was, and was that actually like a you know, a cover of an old song? Because if it wasn't, well, they really nailed that aesthetic there. What is it? Find a way. Find a way. Okay, I'm gonna have to look that one up to see if that was an original song. And hey, they're both on stage. Although I think that also already appeared in the last episode. You know, they were both on stage. And again, like this ending song here was originally made by a group called Mihamaru GT, which consisted of like a girl vocal and a guy sort of like guitarist, DJ, producer, whatever you want to call it, and also rap as well, and backing vocals. Anyways, I will see you guys after this. Okay, guys, so let's get into it. So first things first, I just want to quickly point out two things. One is the insert song in the middle of this episode, the one that Aiko was singing. So that one was apparently a original song directly created for this anime, and I gotta say, they nailed that late 90s aesthetic, like super on point, right? The song name is apparently called Find a Way, which is, I guess that's the most an unauthentic thing about it, because I feel like a 90s like a J-pop mainstream song would not have an English title like Find a Way. But in any case, the production method, the melodies used, right? You listen to it and it's instantly like late 90s J-pop. So I don't quite understand why they were going for that aesthetic though, because considering like Kabetaijin, is he supposed to? I thought that he was supposed to be like literally in his, I guess, post college or something like that. So I wouldn't really say that this a late 90s sound would have been what he would be listening to whilst he was in high school, right? So that to me is a bit more questionable. Maybe he likes more retro music, or perhaps the original work for this, I know it's based on a manga, right? Maybe it was actually conceived and written like a long time before its current adaptation. So like maybe it's way earlier. That's why the author is referencing older songs and whatnot. But in any case, that's the reference they were going for. I'm not quite sure like why specifically choosing a late 90s theme, but you know, I do enjoy it. I like that is actually an era of J-pop that I like very much, and like I said, it's an instantly distinctive sound that you hear there. So hey, it definitely gets to the nostalgia feeling. Like I said, when I listened to it, it seemed reminiscent of some song that I heard before, right? So I wasn't really 100% sure if it was an original or not, but hey, it is original. And the second thing is, I believe I mentioned before, right? The ending song to this anime is Keepin' JoJo, which is a very, very iconic song by Mihamaru GT, which is a two-person sort of, I don't know, like group? I'm not sure like how best, a two-person artist duo, if you will. So the consisting of a guy and a girl, and the girl is the vocalist, right? She's the one that's doing all the singing and whatnot, and then the guy is the one like I believe he raps. He also sometimes plays the keyboard, guitar, or whatnot. They're kind of like, I believe they're kind of like retired at this point, so although occasionally I've seen them coming together for some like special events and whatnot. It's like I mentioned, you know, very early on, Keepin' JoJo is a very, very iconic song. Like literally, I'm sure like most Japanese people know of this song. And so I was thinking like the fact that they had Aiko as a vocalist and then they were trying to get a rapper in Kabetaijin, whether or not they were trying to sort of emulate the sort of Mihamaru GT style and that kind of music and whatnot. And that's why they chose Keepin' JoJo as the ending song for this. So I guess that actually turned out to be true, right? Because Kabetaijin actually appears in the ending song now. He has his part as well. Originally, there was only Aiko, or at least the voice of Aiko, and also the voice of Kongming as well. And now it's the voice of Kabetaijin is also added into it, and he has like a rap part in it. So Kongming is more like the backing vocalist, and Kabetaijin is the one doing the rapping, and then Aiko is of course doing the singing. So I just thought that kind of interesting, and you know, it's I do hopefully in the future we will see a song reminiscent of Keepin' JoJo in the future, because if they can write a hit like that, I would be very, very impressed, right? So you know, keeping my hopes up for something of that sort. Now, obviously, with that out of the way, let's get to the main meat of this episode, right? Or actually, hold on. Before that, let me just quickly point out something that I do really like a lot about the ending of this particular episode, and that is how they show at the very end, you know, what exactly Kongming did to sort of set this up, right? So instead of like the previous few episodes were kind of like it's just, you know, Kongming just somehow made all of this happen out of nowhere, right? So that's one thing to do like that, and I can kind of understand because they're going more for the fictionalized version of Kongming. So he's like this, I keep on mentioning like Deus Ex Machina. He's just there, you know, he always has a plan, he can always turn things around, you know, nothing escapes his eye and whatnot. He always has a contingency plan, right? So that's more of the fictionalized version, but something like this, where they go through like, you know, and really show how he plans things out and what he did in order to set this up, right? Sending his little, you know, recruiting some other personnel here to help tail Kabetaijin, or to ask around, maybe like go to his school or ask some of his classmates or whatnot, like what exactly he liked, his likes and dislikes, that kind of thing. And so being able to find that song had a large sentimental value to him, or, you know, knowing that he has stomach problems, right? And so whilst he was already here, using the bartender to give him some stomach medicine mixed directly within his drink, right? So even though it seems like very wholesome, like reigniting your passion for rap and whatnot, going up there and hey, he's completely fine, right? But there was actually some sort of like backhanded kind of stuff happening under the table. I love that. Like, to me, that is what true intelligence actually is, right? And that is more reminiscent of the real life Kongming instead, where he does plan it ahead and he's smart, so he knows how to do all these things. It doesn't have anything to do with like some mysticism or magic or whatnot. It's just plain old thinking ahead and being smart about it, right? So those two things I like really much for in regards to this particular episode. Okay, so beyond all that, I guess the biggest thing of this particular episode would, of course, be the rap battle, right? Between Kongming and between Kabetaijin. So before we get into anything, I just want to say, like, Kabetaijin definitely has my vote here for who won. In fact, I think Kongming, his like, honestly, if that was an actual battle, I feel like he probably would have been booed off a long time ago. Like, his flow is just not quite there. Like, I know he has some wordplay there. Indeed, I believe, like, in the opening, in his opening verse, if you will, he made a few wordplays there directly on Kabetaijin's name and whatnot. So full props to him for that. And I believe by what the what is being implied here is that actually Kongming is using a large repertoire of words, right? Because, and we would expect that. He's an educated man. He's a learned man. And especially in the case of, considering that Kongming is Kongming, right? The ancient Chinese, the sort of scholars of that time, you go one of two routes, right? You go the warrior route, the general route, in which case you need to show your prowess on the battlefield, or you go for the more intellectual route. And in those times, they don't really make a distinction between like the fields of study that we know now. Like, obviously, someone who's an engineer, right? A computer science or somebody who's like an electrical engineer or something of that sort would be totally different from like a doctor or versus like a business executive. Like, those are completely different areas, right? But in ancient China, they didn't really make that sort of distinction. If you want to view yourself as a scholar and as an intellectual, and eventually get into politics or get into the government work, which is basically all, that was the only work for intellectuals at that time, then you needed to know everything. You needed to know economics, you needed to know history, you needed to know poetry and whatnot. And that is why, it's definitely it's definitely not a surprise that Kongming busted out like an old poem, old Chinese poem in one of his rounds, because that's what they were expected to do, right? And him being like a tactician or a strategist on the battlefield, that has no bearing whatsoever with him knowing of poetry and knowing of that kind of thing, because that was just the general education that was expected of people who battled with their brains rather than with their bodies, right? So that was so it's actually quite it's totally believable that he would have a larger word repertoire than Kabetaijin would have. Now, whether or not that would translate into like a good like rap or rhyming scheme, I guess I can still, like, even disregarding like the sort of he can do it because he's Kongming, right? I can totally see that happening because, like I said before, Japanese is a lot easier to rhyme with when you only have these 5 vowel sounds, right? So it's way easier than something like English or some other sort of or some other sort of language to make sure that you actually have a rhyme there. And they were clear in showing that Kongming, being an actual beginner here, his flow really sucks, right? It didn't really have that sort of like smooth consistency that we see Kabetaijin have. So in that part, like, definitely he was completely slaughtered by Kabetaijin. And to be honest, I don't think like Kabetaijin's wordplay was all that bad either, right? He made historical references as well, which is really important. This is a battle, right? You need to reference your opponent there. You gotta attack them in a way, and what better way to attack them than to point out stuff that they do. In fact, I guess if I were to really criticize like what they were saying, or the actual contents of what they did, I feel like Kongming was really way too he was way too lenient on Kabetaijin, right? He could have attacked him more, calling him a coward or really trying to push his buttons, right? I know he's trying to eventually recruit him and whatnot, but I feel like he didn't really go hard enough in terms of that. Whereas Kabetaijin, on the other hand, he was clearly like calling Kongming out. He was like, you're such a fraud, you're such a loser, why are you trying to dress up like this and be all that when you're certainly not all that, and that kind of thing, right? I wish Kongming would have like maybe drilled into Kabetaijin a little bit more there. So I feel like he just didn't really give as much mic drop moments, if you will, or those one-liners, zingers that Kabetaijin instead had. There was actually a few scenes or a few lines from Kabetaijin that really had those sort of like mic drop moments. Sometimes when he was working the crowd, and sometimes when just based on his own lines and whatnot. But before we get into that, one thing that I was kind of surprised by is how they eventually settled on this kind of format. Because so having like this sort of music in the background and whatnot, this is obviously very inspired by or I could say all sort of mainstream battle rap music kind of scene or scenario is inspired by like the NMM movie 8 Mile, right, where they had that sort of like rap battle scene. And the funny thing about this is that I feel like it's a sort of like a mix of this sort of more mainstream rap battle kind of thing. You have the beat overlaying around it, so it's very 8 Mile-esque, right? Even in the parts where they're sort of like working up the crowds and getting them to chant along and whatnot, it was really 8 Mile-esque. But the thing here is that they actually chose a longer format. They actually chose a more like a more formal freestyle rap battle format, and it's like a sort of like a mix. I don't really watch that many, but what I do know is that for actual these kind of MC battles, for these actual freestyle battles, a lot of them actually don't even have the beat instead. So they are as long as they were implying here, like 3 rounds, and then you alternate and whatnot, like very, very long. But they don't necessarily have this sort of beat within it and working up the crowd and that kind of stuff, right? Whereas if they didn't really completely go down the 8 Mile sort of battle rap route either, because that was much faster, right? Each side just had one chance. You say what you gotta say and that's it. So that's why I mentioned that it seemed quite long, right? Because I'm just like sort of unfamiliar with this format where they sort of like mix both formats together, and it just turns into something that's very, very long. And if they were gonna do it, I wish they would have switched up the tracks a little bit more. Just keep them on their toes and whatnot. If I'm going to sort of refer to a freestyle competition in terms of like a hip hop dance-off battle, right? They would actually sort of like change up the beat and whatnot just to keep the opponents on their competitors on their toes and adapt on the fly, right? But beyond that, though, I feel like even for the actual battle itself, I don't know, like, it just felt kind of long to me. Am I the only one who has this kind of feeling? Part of it is also because the beat wasn't exactly all that fast, but I don't know, it just sort of like dragged on, like each side's part sort of dragged along. I feel like they probably could have benefited if they cut it down a little bit, and kept it more dynamic, if you will, and maybe added some in between sort of moments there, whereas they are both reflecting on what they're going to do next, and maybe even for Kabetaijin to have some introspection and for Kongming to have some introspection as well. So yeah, that's mostly what I want to talk about in terms of the actual rap battle. Now, obviously, they made a few other references as well. So one thing, let me get through the sort of boring one first, was when Kongming referenced that old Chinese poem. Honestly, it's not exactly a very well-known poem, at least for me, anyways. Like, maybe I'm just uncultured, but certainly I wasn't quite aware of that particular poem. It is a poem dating back to around the Han Dynasty, so around like a little bit before Kongming's time, and that would be quite quite the norm for that kind of period, right? You learn from, you learn, like I said before, poetry and the teachings of the old sages and wise men and whatnot, and absorb that knowledge and use that knowledge in your day-to-day life, that's how you convince people. That's how you do debates. Actually, you do it through quoting like ancient people, ancient texts and whatnot, and that is how you win a debate for people. So so I'm not obviously Kongming would know. Well, to be honest, it's kind of like too near, but I'm sure that he would have known about that particular poem. And the Sabe, the red hair guy actually explained it pretty well. The entire poem is basically just a poem about being homesick, essentially, and being homesick and not knowing the way home. So kind of sort of playing into the entirety of Kongming's situation here. So I did like, and by the way, Sabe, what the heck is his name again? Sabe Tokai or whatnot? That kung fu dude, right? The one who was the original champion. Like, he is super smart. Like, normal people would definitely not know what the hell Kongming was talking about. So it just goes to show, like, I do love that they're sort of kind of like implying that rappers need to have like a huge breadth of knowledge in terms of their vocabulary, in terms of their references, because that's literally what they need to draw upon in order to win these sort of battles, right? So I do love that part. So yeah, not entirely too impressed with Kongming's rap and whatnot, and the format, I do feel like maybe could have been tweaked a little bit, but all in all, I mean, it's still fun, right? And I'm not gonna get myself too worked up over all of this, I do, like I said during the episode, I do enjoy the fact that they are doing a duel sort of like this, because on one hand it seems ridiculous, but on the other hand it doesn't seem ridiculous too much, because as I mentioned before, in a lot of Three Kingdoms themed games, they allow these sort of scholars or these sort of strategists, the ones who do battle with their minds, to have these sort of, it wouldn't be a rap, right? They didn't really have a concept of rap in ancient China, but they would definitely have debates, right? They would have debates, and you would need to draw on your knowledge. You would need to quote your ancients. You would need to enlighten people with your knowledge, if you will, and that kind of debate is how like scholars would battle each other. They they don't battle each other with swords and with duels and whatnot, but they duel with their tongues and with their words. So in a sense, this is actually not too far from what Kongming would have actually done before. Although I'm not quite sure if Kongming actually did any sort of debating that much during that time. I don't believe so, but it wouldn't be out of the norm, is what I'm saying here. So that actually has precedence, and that's why that kind of, the fact that he's rapping actually doesn't faze me that much. It's just that his flow really needs some working. Like Kongming, yeah, you just stick with the strategies and whatnot. Rapping is not for you. And beyond that, I guess one final reference in this episode would be in terms of, they mentioned like sort of like the battle between Jiang Wei and Zhao Yun. So that's, I don't know if I really want to get into this that far. That's also referring to I believe a scene from Romance of the Three Kingdoms instead, where Jiang Wei was actually originally a general under that was employed under the Wei kingdom. But during the time when Kongming was leading the army and trying to go north and launch a northern offensive and whatnot, one of the areas that he went to was actually being guarded by Wei Yan, and the one who was actually in charge of taking over that place was Zhao Yun, who was one of the sort of like five greatest generals of the Su kingdom. And so this young upstart, this young whippersnapper, Jiang Wei, was able to go toe to toe and even like see through a lot of Kongming's strategies and his plannings and whatnot. And so that got them very, very impressed with Jiang Wei. Anyway, some other shit happened, and Jiang Wei was eventually, like, his forces were left to fend for themselves. Jiang Wei couldn't really take it anymore, so he surrendered, and later on became like a great general within the Shu King. Within the Shu kingdom as well. Some would say that he's essentially sort of like a successor to Kongming, although that I think in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, they sort of touted Jiang Wei as the direct successor to Kongming in terms of being like this strategist / general who leads the forces, trying to fight against Wei, trying to launch a northern offensive to unify China. Although in reality, he was more like he wasn't really considered to be the direct successor to Kongming, and maybe more like definitely still a top dog there, like maybe you would say like top 5 or top 10 within the chain of command, but not like directly directly like under the emperor like Kongming was. So that's just a quick reference there as well. Not the most important of things, but it's nice that they do reference that part, because that again kind of happens near towards the end of the entire Three Kingdoms story. So the fact that they're taking a lot more of these more obscure references, that does make me kind of happy, right? They're not just referencing the obvious things like the Red Cliff and stuff like that sort of that sort. So yeah. Okay, so this has been like way too long already. I don't think I want to go on anymore. In any case, halfway point of this anime, we got our duo now, and yeah, hopefully from the next episode onwards, we're actually going to focus more on the musical aspects of this and what exactly they're supposed to be doing in order to gain fame, gain popularity, gain word of mouth, and eventually hit their 100,000 like goal. So with that in mind, thank you guys. I will see you guys next time, and bye bye.